Jamen, god aften og velkommen til Radio Frihed. Vi har et spændende program foran os i dag. Vi har 2 timer her fra kl. 16 til kl. 18, hvor vi skal følge op på et radioshow, som vi lavede i august 2012, hvor vi snakkede med 2 damer fra USA. En, der hedder Rena Patty, og en, der hedder Pamela Senzee. De var i gang med at cykle fra vestkysten til østkysten på deres cykler. Og på den tur, som de kaldte 9/11 Journey for Truth, der delte de blandt andet en film ud fra en organisation, der hedder Arkitekter og Ingeniører for 9/11 Sandhed. Og den film hedder Eksplosive Beviser, eller Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out, eksperterne taler ud. Og derfor har vi også valgt at kalde det her program for det samme. Og vil man høre det første show, jamen, så kan man gå ind på Radio Friheds hjemmeside, radiofrihed.dk, og så kan man høre det første show. Men det er jo lidt for sent nu, fordi lige nu her, der sidder jeg faktisk med en gæst i studiet, og det er dig, Niels Frihed, tidligere eller pensioneret lektor fra Københavns Universitet, lektor i kemi inde på Kemisk Institut. Og hvorfor du sidder her, det kommer vi nok lidt nærmere på lidt senere. Men det har jo blandt andet noget med 11. september at gøre, og det ligger jo ligesom i ordet 9/11 Journey for Truth, at det handler om det. Og så skal vi muligvis i løbet af programmet også have stifteren af Arkitekter og Ingeniører for 9/11 Sandhed, Patty-Harrit-Gage, igennem. Og der skulle komme nogle andre gæster, men det er faktisk sådan, at vi har ringet Pamela op, og så er det hende, der styrer det her show her, så i hvert fald med hensyn til de amerikanske gæster, og så vil Niels hjælpe mig med at styre showet her fra Danmark af. Så det kunne være, at vi skulle sige hej til Pamela. Hvis... Jeg skal lige... Det er rigtigt.
Okay.
Det er den her. Nu er der noget hylder her. Hallo?
Yes.
Pamela?
Yes.
Hello, Pamela.
Hello.
Hello, this is Josef from Copenhagen.
Hello, Joseph.
Hello, you are a little weak. Maybe I can get the... Kan du skrue lidt op, Tove? Okay.
Okay. Is this better?
Yes, now I hear you a little better.
Okay.
Okay, hello, Pamela, and thank you for last time.
Yes, absolutely.
It was great. Last time it was in August 2012, where we talked to each other.
Yes, and I think Rena and I were in Montana.
Yeah. I think you're right. You just started your journey about 2-3 weeks ago, and now today you're going to tell us how your journey was and how it's been in the month after you finished the journey. And as I told the Danish audience, we will have Rena Patty and Patty-Harrit-Gage with us also. And here in the studio, I have Professor Niels Harrit with me.
Hello, yes. Pamela.
Hello, Dr.
You hear me? I hear you, but very faintly.
Oh dear,
in my earphones. I'm
right up to the speaker.
Trying to. Our technician is shaking his head, so he can't make it any better. So we had to do with this. But here I am, Pamela, and in Copenhagen, Denmark, we have a blizzard. A real snowstorm is coming up, so I've been fighting my way to the studio. How is it? You're in Washington.
No, I'm in Phoenix. I'm back home in Phoenix, Arizona, where it's nice and warm.
Okay.
Hello, Niels. This is Rena Patty. I am in Washington State.
Okay, so you both Rena and Pamela is on the line now.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes, that's great. Hello, Rena.
Yes. Hello.
And you're in Washington.
Yes, Washington State.
Washington State. And did you have any snow around there at this time?
No, the Pacific Northwest is warm and wet. It's nearly freezing and raining.
Okay, so you're on the warm side of Rocky Mountains then.
Yes.
Ha. All right. Not here. We have a snowstorm, a blizzard, really, but it's not really cold. It's just a lot of snow. All right. So what is the program, Josef?
Yes. I didn't know we had Rena with us, so great to hear your voice, Rena, also. I didn't expect you coming in from the start. But I thought that maybe one of you, we have presented you in the last show, but maybe you can just tell us about how the journey went. You were in Montana last time, and how did it go from then?
Well, we rode across northern Montana. We stopped and talked with sheriff departments in each town, and talked with some firefighters, dropped in on some fire drills that were happening. Then we crossed North Dakota and Minnesota. Pam took another direction in Minnesota and went through bigger cities while I continued on a more rural route. So Pam's final destination was Washington, D.C., and my final destination was New York City.
Okay. So you parted in Minnesota, but the first part of your journey, you're riding together, and on your website, 9/11 Journey for Truth, we have been able to follow your journey. Maybe one of you, even Pamela or Rena, can tell us about one of the best incidents you had on your journey when you talked to fire departments and police stations and kids and folks you met on your journey. Is there a special incident that you would like to refer to us here in Denmark?
Yeah, sure, I can speak. This is Rena. And I was a little nervous crossing into New York State. I didn't know what kind of reception I would get. But I decided to go ahead and talk with people like I'd been talking with people all the way across. And what I found in the fire stations and in people in general was a deeper sense of gratitude. All along the way, people asked, you've ridden how far and for what? And wanted more information, and they would say, thank you for doing what you're doing. How can I help? And in New York State, I stopped at a couple of fire stations where the firefighters, you could see a deeper sense of gratitude in their facial expressions, just in their eyes. And they would say, thank you for doing this. And there was one station in particular along the Erie Canal route in New York State, where a firefighter was very, very well informed about the scientific evidence. And he told me about a poster that he had laminated on the side of the ladder of the truck, on the bucket of the ladder truck. It was one of the posters of the firefighters planting a flag on the top of the debris pile with the words, "We will never forget." And what I found in the firefighters in New York State was that they were eager to help me know where the fire stations were in the upcoming towns. They didn't want me to miss them.
Okay.
So they were very grateful.
That sounds good, because you could fear that they would.
If I may come in here. Your story is very moving. It's very touching, really. And what you see in their eyes is telling more than many headlines, really. And I see it as it's a very important picture of the situation today, the present situation, which is, if we can assess that during this 2 hours program, I think it'll be very important. And the report, this was Rena giving from the firefighters in New York State, I think it's important, because our civilization, in my opinion, is really at a tipping point right now, and what is going to happen in the United States is very important. So these are, on one side, good news, as Josef pointed out, and on the other side, it's very moving because it really reflects our movement as being a global movement. And if you can walk in on a foreign fire station in upstate New York and connect the way you've done, it means basically that everybody knows that there is something wrong. Agree?
I would agree on that.
Are you there?
Yeah. Yes. You know, I would say that most of my trip across the country when I dropped in and talked to firefighters or police officers, church leaders, that they had not heard about this information. The vast majority of people had not had access to this information yet. And so they were really pretty surprised by what I had to offer. And as they would listen to the scientific evidence as I was presenting it, you could see that they would begin to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah,
and
yes.
That this was new information.
And painful.
They were hearing it for the first time. It was hard to take in, but they wanted to look more deeply into it.
Yeah.
And so that shifted a bit when I was in New York State, but there was greater awareness.
And that of course is understandable because our movement has been a movement that has developed over the internet, and while it developed over the internet, the mass media have totally ignored it. So when you do what everybody should do, take the information from the internet and bring it to the people who don't go on the internet, and you present it for the first time, then they are just amazed. And yeah, that's why we're talking together today, because I think it's an amazing effort that you two women did, and a lot of other activists who helped you, and thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm really glad that I made the choice that I made to do this trip, and if I had the choice to do again, I would do it.
Wait until summertime.
Pam, do you have a special event that you would like to share with us here in Denmark?
Yes. Well, I'd first like to introduce the attorney who took time off of his busy schedule to meet me in D.C. and help me to file a complaint with the FBI. His name is David Meiswinkle, and I believe he's still with us. Are you with us, David?
Yes, I am. How you doing? I'm Dave Meiswinkle. I'm in New Jersey. I'm from the area where the hurricane hit, Sandy, and right off the coast of New Jersey here.
Hello, David.
Hi.
What a pleasant surprise.
Yes, I feel extremely fortunate to have an attorney who is willing to do this pro bono and just come down, and it made all the difference. That for me is the highlight. Is actually filing a complaint with the FBI, submitting the nanothermite documents for the research that Dr. Kretz and others did, documenting the discovery of nanothermite in the dust of 9/11. And we also submitted a document, a medical research paper that documents the discovery of carbon nanotubes in the dust of in the dust and the lungs of first responders for 9/11. And we also submitted the film 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out. So this is a legal process that's been put into place, and the FBI is accountable to do this research. They have to read those documents and do that film. And we spoke with a special agent that in a couple of months we're going to follow up with and see where it's going. And if it's not a transparent process, then of course down the road we have the Freedom of Information Act. Yeah. So I feel good about that. I feel like there's another step in the process that is holding the government accountable to do the investigations that it is required to do. And in addition, across my trek from Fargo to D.C., my primary focus was university outreach. So I went to a number of universities, ESU, Minnesota State Community, and technical. I went to St. Cloud, University of Wisconsin at Madison, University of Illinois at Chicago, Purdue, Columbia State Community College, University of Pittsburgh, and the last but not least was the George Washington University of Law in D.C.
Great to hear.
So it's great to see these young people. That it's extremely heartening, and their response was overwhelmingly receptive and positive, and yes, I'll look into this. Most of them were very unfamiliar with the material, and most of them received it quite well.
Yeah, of course they are unfamiliar because the mass media don't tell them the truth. If I could I go and ask David again? It's very uplifting to hear about the FBI complaint that you filed. What are the chances that something will come out of it? That FBI will take this complaint and do something with it? I would like to direct this question to David.
I don't think that any of us know. I think it's something that had to be done. I think it's probably a long shot, but I think these documents are probably causing a stir within the agency, depending on who's looking at it. So I think you just have to, say a prayer and hope it goes in the right direction.
Yeah.
It's better than nothing. It's a start. And just to also add to what Pamela said, she also submitted the petition to the White House with all the signatures of all the architects and engineers on. So that was, I think, significant also. But can you hear me? Because I'm getting the feedback right now.
Yeah, I hear you very vaguely, and
I think both Niels and I are closing our eyes just to concentrate on what you are saying. But I hear you. Yes, I hear you.
I hear you better than Pamela.
Right. I think that it's, like I said, it's the beginning process. The documents are excellent documents, and they're given to. I mean, if we want to get the investigation going in the right direction, hopefully they will do that. That there's other ways to get the information out, but this is a law enforcement that would normally you would think would be very interested in the information and do something with it. So I think we just have to just cross our fingers, or say our prayers and hope that the right people read it, review it, study it, and follow it up.
Yeah. May I come in here because we all have a feeling that FBI has more than a share in the 9/11 events, and no doubt that there will be a limit how far this will go within the FBI. And the story of Colin Rowley in Minneapolis is telling a lot. But one question, are FBI agents and employees, are they actually taking an oath on the Constitution?
On the Constitution?
Yeah.
I'm sure when they got sworn in, I'm familiar with some law enforcement, they're always in order, and when you get into the military, you usually swear you take an oath to protect the country, etc.
Yeah. But this is
Protect the country or the Constitution. This is important because I know that military personnel, they're swearing in on the Constitution. And that's the crucial point, not to protect the country, but to protect the Constitution.
Right.
So what about FBI agents? Tell us.
Good question. I don't know the nature of their oath.
Okay.
But
Yes, I just looked this up. This is Rena. I just looked this up, and yes, they do swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Okay. That's it.
Excellent question.
Yeah, that's it.
yeah.
Pam and David and Rena, can I take just a few minutes to sum up what you said in English for the Danish listeners? and then we will return to the interview.
Joseph, can I add something?
Yeah?
What Mr. Meiswinkle said is that we did submit the petition of over 1,700 architects and engineers asking for a new investigation to President Obama, and also the film 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out. So that went to him as well, and I spoke to his staff secretary, who told me he does review all those systems personally, and so we know that he has that copy of the petition and the film, and I believe is obligated to look into it. So.
Yeah, let's hope
He does look at it. I remember that Charlie Sheen did something similar, did a letter to President Obama, but obviously he didn't listen. I will just take a minute or two to translate to the Danish audience what we talked about. Som sagt, så sidder vi lige i øjeblikket og taler med Rena Patty, Pamela Senzee og en advokat ved navn David Meiswinkle, tror jeg han hedder. De har sammen været haft arrangeret en tur på tværs hen over USA fra vestkysten til østkysten. Da de kom til Minnesota, så delte de sig op. Pamela kørte imod Washington, og Rena Patty kørte sig videre mod New York. Men de fik altså krydset USA, de her 4.000 mil, tror jeg det er. Og på vejen, der fik de blandt andet hjælp af en advokat, som hedder David Meiswinkle, tror jeg, og fik sendt en klage til FBI over de beviser, som hober sig op i øjeblikket, og som fortæller, at den officielle forklaring på 11. september ikke er sand. Pamela Senzee har besøgt en masse universiteter, og hun har ramset en del af de universiteter op. Rena Patty har mere koncentreret sig om brandmænd og om politistationer. Og samtidig så har de delt en film ud, som hedder Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out. Har de delt ud til folk, som de mødte på vejen. Og nu skal vi vende tilbage og høre, hvad er det, de har oplevet på den her tur her. Sorry, Pamela and Rena. I just had to take a few minutes. And David also.
Are you still there?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So you filed that complaint to Mr. Obama or President Obama. Did you hear anything from that, Pamela?
No. I would expect at least a formal acknowledgement. I did give all my contact information and sent it with a personal note. So, I may call or contact the White House, when we connect with the FBI again and just see.
Yeah, we have to do.
The paperwork has to be done, and we have to work in different ways. Niels, do you have something to add?
Yes, actually I do, because it is according to custom. We play a little music in these kind of programs, and I have something which is relevant for the issue of addressing the president. It's about the Vietnam War, and the artist is called Washington Brown Esquire. And before I tell you what it is about, I have to apologize eventually for the audio quality, because this is a digital copy from a cassette, an old cassette tape, so I don't know what it will come out like. But Mr. Washington Brown is a blues artist, and as I have revealed earlier, I'm not really a scientist. Basically, I'm a musician. So this is hard blood in a sense from me, this kind of music. And Washington Brown is addressing President Nixon on the issue of preemptive strikes.
Så er vi tilbage igen efter musikken, og igennem på telefon fra USA har vi to aktivister, Rena Patty og Pamela Senzee, og samtidig har vi også en advokat igennem, også fra USA, der hedder David Meiswinkle, mener jeg han hedder. Og lad os prøve at slå over i engelsk og høre, hvad de har at fortælle. Hello, Pamela, Rena, and David.
So
We are back from the studio in Copenhagen.
Okay.
we just listened
to some music, some blues music from Washington Brown, and we talked about your letter to the FBI and your letter to Obama. Also, I would also like to ask you about when you went out on your bike and you went to these universities. Because I would like to hear a lot of the incidents you had on your journey, and also from Rena, more from the fire departments and the police stations. But can you tell us just one incident from a university that you visited, Pamela?
Yes, well, I spoke to a number of students, and I can say that they were just very receptive. They were oftentimes in a hurry on their way to classes. I spoke to some who were well versed in the video that I was giving them, 9/11 Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out. And there were some who expressed a deep concern. I spoke to a student who was studying to be a civil engineer, and he talked to me at length about Building 7. And he's actually in the film. There's a documentary that we're making about the DC trek and some of the trek that we were on from Washington State. And he's in that film. I can't quote him verbatim, but he's talking about how strange it was the way that building came down. And this is something from a number of people that I heard. You know, once you're introducing the information to them, they look at you and say, you know, it was really strange the way that building came down. And so there were a number of students that also said that, but most of them were unfamiliar and yet receptive. And I would say that the reason that they were receptive is because the presentation that Rena and I both gave to anyone we spoke to was science and evidence. You know, it wasn't conspiracy theory, it wasn't 9/11 was an inside job, it was science and evidence. And so this gives people an open door to say, oh, really? That's interesting, and I definitely want to look into it. So that's the response that I got.
Yeah, great to hear that.
Science can be used as a tool. You're making a film, and I remember Niels, the last time we talked, he asked you to please document the events and make a book or something like that. Rena, can you tell us more about what will be in this movie that you're making?
You'll have to ask Pamela that question.
Okay, Pamela.
Can you tell us a little bit about the movie? When can we expect a movie coming out?
I don't know. I don't know. It may be a couple of months. People can do a search on YouTube for a film called Truth Frihed, and I think I don't know. I don't have the name in front of me, but there's kind of a preliminary presentation of it there.
Yeah, and it is true that
if you go to the website of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, you can see as the top video, you can see your movie a little bit of the movie from your journey. Rena, can you tell us about a little more about? Now you told us about the Washington Fire Department. What about when you went to the police departments or churches or other religious officials? Can you tell us more about your journey?
Yeah, this is Rena, and when you asked that question, one interaction came to me. It was in a city along Lake Erie in the state of Ohio. Police chief invited me in to hear more about the information that I was presenting, and I was describing the various types of evidence of molten steel and the iron microsphere, and I began to describe the nanothermite, and he said, well, how did that get there? That shouldn't be there. And I said, yes, that's why we're calling for a proper investigation based on the forensic evidence. He said, well, that's what I would say.
Yeah, it should not be there. Niels might be better than me to explain all of this. And I know that you also have a question that you would like to ask Niels, and I asked him before the show how it is. But I would like Niels to maybe talk about it himself. You asked him last time in August about the carbon nanotube report, and maybe Niels, can you tell us how is it going on with the work on that?
Oh, you're really hitting a sore spot there because it is not finished yet, and the sad truth, or the good truth, is that we are so busy in Copenhagen just keeping up with our daily 9/11 truth work. So this is basically what has kept me from finishing it. I know it's important and it's still there, but if I may give a report from the daily life in the 9/11 truth movement in Copenhagen, it is basically the same message that we can bring along, that it is not difficult to talk with people about it, except from the mainstream press, of course. But in the streets, when we are passing out flyers, and as you may know, I'm giving many presentations. Richard Gage, probably he still holds the world record in number of presentations on 9/11 and World Trade Center and Building 7. But I believe that I am number 2. I think Richard has passed the 250 mark, but I have passed the 150 mark. So this is what we're doing. We're passing out flyers. But the contact with people in the street has definitely softened up a lot within a period over the last 1.5 years or so, that the hostility and the fear is not there anymore. People are actually smiling, accepting the information, and the attendance of my presentations has not faded out. Actually, it's going pretty good, and these are new people coming in. We are not preaching to the saved. We are aiming at the uninitiated, people who have never heard about Building 7 before. And once, as we all know, once you have seen Building 7 once, there's no way back. But I'm spending a lot of my time fighting the mainstream press, and we have a system of complaints in Denmark where you constantly have deadlines. You have to file a complaint within 4 weeks before the event, which is keeping me constantly busy. Also because the lawyers in the state administration, they're finding tooth and nails to keep us off. And this is very time-consuming. This is, I would say, the main reason why I haven't finished the nanotube picture yet. But I have a very severe deadline coming up on January 1st, which may actually encourage you or bring some hope. And that is that I'm still missing some pictures to go into this paper. And they have to be taken by a colleague of mine, and he's going into retirement on January 1st. But I have secured that he will still be around, because we're dealing with an instrument where he is the master. So I need his assistance here. So and that is it. But this is not the paper we're talking about here. There'll be no mention of World Trade Center. It will be a scientific paper which is just bridging the gap between the nanotubes in the lungs of the first responders and the nanothermite. As you know, the paper you have been submitting to the officials is documenting the occurrence of the nanotubes in the lung tissue of these responders, this personnel. What I will be doing is just to demonstrate that if you prepare nanothermite according to the recipe from the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, which Kevin Ryan has done in his back garden in Bloomington, Indiana, and you fire the nanotubes, in the residue from that process, you also find carbon nanotubes. So, and that will be what I will do. There'll be it's a new discovery, actually, the chemical process in itself. And then it will be to the rest of the 9/11 Truth movement to lean back and say, now that is a strange coincidence. So we just have to wait for that. But I apologize for my delay, and I think I have good excuses, which I think you'll all understand. Thank you.
I can support that Niels is he is number one in Denmark doing this 9/11 Truth together with his wife. Those two are doing an amazing job. And if people want to follow just a little bit of what they are doing, I can direct them to the Facebook group called Niels Harrit, where I'm one of the administrators, and I try to present on English and Danish some of the work that they do, so people can not see we're just leaning back and then rolling our thumbs. Pamela and Rena, maybe one of you can tell us a little bit more about. Now you did your bike ride, and then you Pamela went to Washington and Rena went to New York. How was it to finish this tour?
Go ahead, Rena.
Yes.
Sure. This is Rena, and I arrived in New York City on October 27th. Rode into the city about noon, and as I was riding down through Manhattan on the bike path, I was met by a woman there who witnessed the South Tower coming down, and she met me with a fresh batch of business cards. She brought some food for me, insisted that I sit down and eat with her. It was, and then she rode her bicycle with me into the World Trade Center site to my final destination, which was World Trade Center, building number 7. And as we rode along, she told me about her experience of watching that tower come down. And I could see the trauma and the grief still alive in her face, in her body. And it really brought home to me the reason for that bike trip. And so I was grateful for the company. I was greeted by a separately small group of people in the city there, but again with that depth of gratitude. And one of the things that they told me was, people in New York City, we still care about this because we're so deeply affected. People west here, they've forgotten. They don't care. So that's why it's so important that you rode your bicycle into the country. And I was tell them that people all the way across the country are still interested in it. It still matters to people. A lot of memorials, the World Trade Center feel that fire stations are setting a focal point for their memorial that we will never forget. And then about a half a decade in New York City before the came in, and I was most wanted to do, which was to visit fire stations in Lower Manhattan. Friend line and I around Lower Manhattan fire station. They gave us directions to the next station, and what I saw, at least the fire stations I talked to, had never heard of architecture 9/11 Truth. They had not heard about the evidence. They were really impressed. I'd ridden my bicycle for a while, so I invited in a photo when he gave me a T-shirt. But he gave them a DVD just like given the DVDs. All the other fire stations. The only thing that was different was how many fire had died. 11. And a firefighter. Then he was busy to tell me that he offered something that he stayed with us for about 20 years. And he had evidence from his sisters, the one of architects and engineers. He learned about it from his San Diego. Tim, do you talk with the experts? He said, no, we don't. There's things we don't talk about. So that was, I talked with a police officer in the streets of New York, and he said, you're around party. And I said, no, why do you do that? You just apologize. So I was curious. I said, how do you feel about the politics? His response was, well, I can say good luck. I think he was implying that this issue is so politically off that nobody, any position can talk to you.
Kan du høre dårligt? Kan du også høre dårlig forbindelse?
Business card.
Okay.
So, but how I in New York City was seeing fire station, talking to police on the street, and then if I had to touch by the hurricane.
Thank you, Rena,
for sharing your story. I must admit that here in Denmark we could maybe just hear half of it. That it's a very bad connection we have to your phone.
I heard enough.
You heard it, yeah, and it is.
I heard enough. It's very moving, almost heartbreaking. You know, I was living in New York City in 1977. So when you describe your ride into the city, you probably, if you came down Manhattan, you've been riding on Broadway. I was living off Broadway around 120th Street. And so all the pictures was rolling for my interview. And it's heartbreaking, really. And if we, maybe in the last hour, if we can address the issue of how this enormous emotional, enormous, giant emotional power can be directed and unified into this shift of paradigm which is bound to come. Because, and eventually, if we can bring in David also to say something about the general state of mentality in the United States. I know you're only 3 people, and I know that the United States is huge, but still, there'll be a tsunami of social change coming, and the emotion that the emotion that you're reflecting from meeting these people in the streets, they're single voices, but they're expressing a much huger, must be a feeling that that something is going very wrong, and some people can connect the dots and see 9/11 as a key event, and other people don't. And when you refer that we don't talk about it, that's what you say in the fire stations. It's the same thing in the universities all over the world almost. We don't talk about it. In the families, we don't talk about it because it is so painful. But when the social changes which are bound to come very soon, what I envision is that 9/11 truth will, what we have to do, our destiny, and our aim should be to ride actually as a surf rider on the top of this gigantic wave and waving the flag of 9/11 truth. Because as John, not because it is so important, because this is much, these changes will be much more profound, but because I still think in terms of awakening consciousness, 9/11 is the key for that simple reason. John McIlvaine, who we all know was the father of Bobby and who died in the North Tower collapse, he put it down so simply: this time they went too far, this time they fucked up. So 9/11 is the key to the change to come, and Building 7 is the key to 9/11. And maybe David would come in and comment on the general state of emotions in the United States population right now.
Dr. Harrit, I want to thank you very much for all the work you've done. It's inspirational, it really is, and that your care and concern for this issue. It's such an important issue. And I also want to thank the host, Josef Hanji, for having a show and allowing it to be broadcast throughout Europe, I guess. I'm not sure where it's going, but just the fact that we're on the air and we're discussing this important issue. I agree with you totally that this is the key. The 911 is the key. And what interested me so much about architects and engineers, because I was looking for an organization where I could at least get to some extent involved, was that they were dealing with the facts. They were scientists, engineers. They weren't out to politically spin it. They were looking at the facts of the case and trying to understand what the implications of those facts. I think you're totally right that, in a sense, this issue could actually revitalize the world. Where I live is in New Jersey, and this state really hasn't been organized like it should be, and hopefully will be, as far as creating an awareness in the people. We're right next to New York. In fact, approximately 700 people from New Jersey were killed on that day. And one of the airplanes was hijacked out of Newark Airport, which is Newark, the biggest city in New Jersey. And we know the World Trade Center complex was owned by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. And the anthrax attacks were in Princeton and Hamilton, New Jersey, which is near where I live. So New Jersey has a lot of connections. But what I find, and I find this I have a background in the law enforcement and also as an attorney. And I find that so many people just don't know the facts. But I find this, that 10, 11 years removed now, they're more receptive to listening to the facts. And when you tell someone about Building 7, I mean, they're astounded. They don't know. I've talked to intelligent, very educated attorneys that don't know about Building 7, and they live in New Jersey. Now, New Jersey, from where I live, is only 40 miles from New York City. It's right here. And yet the people don't know the facts. So part of this is that to get the information out. And I think as more and more information comes out, there'll be some kind of a qualitative change in the mindset of the people. There is nothing more important, I believe, than to have serious hearings on all these facts, to have this covered internationally by the media. When people are testifying, etc., it filtrates the neighborhoods, as I say, in New Jersey. So it becomes the biggest topic of discussion, because it is the biggest topic that's been hidden and been sat on by those who can do that. Again, that raises a lot of questions. Why would someone want to do that? But that's not for us to answer here. But it is important for the scientists that have done their work. These are experts. If I was going into a trial or to a case, I would call my expert, and I would ask them within a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, what does this, basically, the evidence tell you? And if it does tell you that it's controlled demolition or explosion, I mean, that's an incredible revelation for most people. Although, as you mentioned before, as you see these buildings go down on the video, you have to, if you have a clear mind, you have to say, that's peculiar. How could fire bring those buildings down? That's a question. And let's look into this a little more. So, in addition to what the scientists have done and what this new paper, the medical paper, now has brought the medical profession is because these carbon nanotubes now are in the lungs of the first responders. It's more evidence there to look into and look deeper into the issues of what is actually in their lungs and how could it possibly have gotten there, in addition to what's in the dust there. So as we look at it as scientists, then law enforcement should be looking at it also as law enforcement and using these scientists as experts to come forth and to they make their case as what really happened here, and have we been going in the wrong direction? And I would say that when the facts are shown to the American people, which I don't think they have yet totally, because the media is so hard to work with. But eventually there'll be more and more maybe opportunities, maybe more openings, and more of this information gets out, and as more and more people become aware, hopefully there'll be a mandate on having new hearings, and also seeking out in the law enforcement area new indictments to trying to direct the investigation to those who are responsible. But it needs to be the work that's been done by architects and engineers, by scientists like Dr. Harrit, is incredible for the truth movement in the world. It is outstanding. It is like, historically, this will be a time when hopefully you'll be given your credit, because you're in the wilderness now. This is the wilderness, unfortunately, and hopefully we come out of the wilderness into a beautiful scenery. If not, then we have to look at what does that mean then? If this important event has been sat on and covered up, that does not forebode well for the future of at least our country, in the United States. And you could argue, I'm not going to say that it's been done before, we're not going to look at the past right now, but we don't want it to happen again. And that's what's so important. It cannot happen again. The ramifications of a free world, of a democratic world, are at stake. And just the definition of what it means to be a human being is at stake. So everything is in the balance now. So it's so important, the work that you're doing, the work that Rena and Pam did, the work that Richard Gage is doing, and when I say the work that Josef Hanji is doing, just to put this on the air. And again, Dr. Harrit, I want to thank you from a person in New Jersey, United States, for all your work, and please continue it. Thank you.
Yeah, I have to come in here and actually thank you. It's a bit too much, really, because I would like to actually pass on your compliments to Professor Stephen Earl Jones from the Brigham Young University in Utah, and Kevin Ryan, because these were the two men who actually got me into it. So Professor Jones is the real, in terms of science and 9/11 truth, Professor Jones is a pioneer, and he should really be the recipient of the roses that you just passed on. So thank you a lot, David, for your comments. Everything is in a balance now. That's, I think, the key phrase I heard from you. And the documentation of Pamela and Rena's journey, I think, is likewise just as important, because, well, scientists, maybe we can move brains, but it doesn't count so much. Pamela and Rena, you're moving hearts, and it's far more efficient. So it is. I believe then when 9/11 will be breaking, it will be the filmmakers who are doing this. It will be in the cinemas, and it will be moving the hearts, because this is also the hard point. This is the emotional barrier that you have to overcome. The point is because the information is painful. And that is why Pamela and Rena is doing such a great work. You're seeing, you're observing that they are, the people you've been talking with who did not know about Building 7, they become uncomfortable. So this is a reflectory reaction. This is painful. This is knowledge which hurts. And that is the true barrier that we are up against. But we have to do it. And we know it hurts when you're telling your family about this. Yes, it hurts. But you have to tell your children about it. And that's a sad story, but this is a track we are on. There's no giving up. There's no checking out of this. Maybe when I have the microphone here, to make a little advertising, you're bringing in David and Pamela and Rena also, the great work of architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. And yes, these are the most important Truth organization, most efficient right now. And the strategy of just bringing the facts on the table is the best route. May I point your attention onto the Consensus Point Project, which is run by David Ray Griffin and Elizabeth Woodworth out of Victoria in British Columbia, where I'm on a panel with 19 other, actually gentlemen at the time, where we are collecting points which everybody can agree upon being wrong in the official version of events on 9/11. And it is a kind of documentation which is different from architects and engineers, but we are accumulating different points, which is just as important. I think we are up to about 29 points at the time, and we think we're about halfway through. This will be also a very solid body of verified evidence. And thirdly, just recently there was an international, what did you call it? This conference in Kuala Lumpur, which was initiated by Mahathir Mohamad, the former Prime Minister of Malaysia, where they're setting up a permanent, not a tribunal, but something like that in Kuala Lumpur, which aims at actually indicting and bringing the true perpetrators to justice. Ferdinando Imposimato, the honorary president of the Italian Supreme Court, is now submitting also charges for the International Crime Court in Den Haag in Holland. There are things going on in Russia. I was in Moscow about 1.5 months ago and actually did an interview on the Arabic channel of Russia Today. It hasn't been broadcast yet because it has to be overdubbed, actually, so it takes some time. But they are reaching 40 million Muslims, and etc., etc., etc. There's plenty of things going on in the world. But, of course, the situation in the United States is most important for many reasons. So it's encouraging also to hear what is coming on. But may I end just to pray for this film, the movie about your trip, Pamela and Rena, and hope that it will come out and make as much noise as the Press for Truth with the Jersey Girls, which also was very important, addressing, allow me to say, maybe the more emotional sides of this, because this is, in my opinion, more quantitatively important than what the scientists are doing. Thank you.
Yes, and I would also like to thank you.
David, I must admit I had goosebumps all over when you spoke, and thank you to you too. I can tell you that this interview only goes live out in Copenhagen, but as soon as we can, we'll put it on the internet and can be heard all over the world. You used a word, astounding. I would call the word that everybody is doing if they choose to do be a part of the 9/11 movement. Astounding, because they really put things to the side. They put their families aside, their friends aside, just to go through this process. And as Niels mentioned, it's very emotional, and I would like to also just tell shortly about an incident here in Denmark, and it was actually when Rena spoke about the pain in the faces of the people who had watched, and Niels also spoke about it, had watched the towers fall down. And a couple of years ago, I was in the streets of Copenhagen dealing out flyers, and me and my friend, we had our Investigate 9/11 T-shirts on, and we met this woman, a famous photographer from New York. Her name is Cheryl Dunn, and she told us she had an office or a laboratory, or what they have, these photographers studio. Yes, thank you, Niels. And she told us she had it right next to the World Trade Center, and she watched the towers collapse. And she told us that she could hear the floors hitting each other, and she said it would like boom, 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 boom. Of course, me and my friend, we thought that would be the explosives. But I remember her, and I remember her name. And I can wake up in the night and I will still remember her name. And I think it is because of the pain I saw in her face as she spoke. And I've tried to contact her after this, because she actually told us she had some dust. And I know that the scientists have asked for dust, but she have not returned any of my messages. Not my emails, not my. I found her on Facebook also. She had not returned anything, and I think that's the emotions. She can't speak about it. She thought that it was the boom, boom, boom was the floors hitting each other, where we thought it's the explosives. Pamela, it's been a long time since we heard from you. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the emotions influence the American people and people around the world?
Well, as everybody was speaking, one of the things that came to my mind was that when I spoke to students across the country and brought up the loss of liberties that we have had, the post-9/11 world, that's what would really, the expression on their faces would change. And they would go from being, very receptive to science and evidence, and yes, okay, I'll look into that. They would rather, their faces would, I don't know, they became very serious and extremely attentive. And, this is key, because a lot of Americans and these students, these young people, they don't know how many liberties they have lost. They don't know that the Patriot Act and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights cannot coexist. And the Patriot Act does exist. And therefore, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights are, in a very precarious patchwork state. And it's not that we have to sustain our liberties in this country, it's that we have to get them back. And it's an extremely serious situation. We live in a closing society, and I would invite anybody who's interested in these issues, who's awakening by listening to this radio show, to go and get Naomi Wolf's book, The End of America. Because in the Bush years, during the Bush years, when she wrote this book, we thought that the Democrats would save us. I certainly did. And although I didn't think Obama was, anything like Kucinich, for instance, I did think that the Democrats would turn a lot of this around, these draconian measures. And they haven't. As a matter of fact, unfortunately, many Dems have voted overwhelmingly for some of these draconian measures, such as indefinite detention, of anyone in the world, including Americans, because the world has been declared a battleground. The American government has declared the world a battleground. Now, the indefinite detention for Americans has been ruled unconstitutional, but it's still on the table, and we expect an appeal. And this is something that can be, re-stimulated, brought up. Torture has been something that senators have argued for on the Senate floor as recently as November 2011. Okay, so this is a post 9/11 world, and it must change. We have to change it. We have to do whatever we can to change it. And the key, as everybody has said, is this science and evidence of 9/11 truth, because that is presented by architects and engineers for 9/11 truth. Because if so many experts and so much science, which is extremely sound, is putting severely into question the official story for 9/11, then we as a nation have to take a cold, hard look at ourselves. It is our job to change this, and it is our mandate from our forefathers. The mandate of a free society is an informed citizenry, and a citizenry that is active. It's more than voting. And corporate influence is so strong in America now that even voting is put into question. We have to be doing things that hold our government to account. And it's everyone's responsibility, because we have to get it back now. We have to restore a free society. Many of our rights are actually privileges. And that's a big difference. I have a 23-year-old son. Rena has 2 teenage sons. A lot of our motivation, I can't speak for Rena, but I know that she's verbalized things. We care so much about the young people. We're surrounded with young people. And I want to see this next generation have the same liberties that I grew up with. And right now they don't.
Yeah.
You are absolutely right, Pamela. I'm almost bursting into tears because it is about the loss of liberties, and the kids, they don't understand. I would have to come in here and tell about another incident, because I make my living as a teacher. I teach politics and history, and last week I actually had Niels Harriet's wife as a guest teacher coming into my 9th grade, telling about her 50 years of experience doing activism, fighting against nuclear weapons, fighting against the Vietnam War, and so on. And I remember one of the pupils asked her, "Why do you do this?" And I remember the face of Pernille. She was like, she could hardly understand this question was coming, but I understood that the pupils, they don't know what they're losing out on. In this week, we had some people coming out telling about the human rights of the United Nations. And of course, the human rights are violated by the National Defense and Authorization Act that we also spoke about last time, the NDAA, that Obama signed on New Year's Eve, the 31st of October, December 2011. So maybe you, David, can you tell us about a little more about what we know here in Denmark, what liberties we are losing, and we are fighting a fight here. Can you tell us, David, a bit more about the loss of liberties in the United States, and maybe tell us a little bit about the National Defense and Authorization Act?
Yes, I can speak a little bit about it. Without a doubt, the Fourth Amendment has been under attack. That the law enforcement now can do things to monitor people that they couldn't do before. with regards to your free speech, with regards to due process, with regards to being able to being basically apprehended and locked up without charge if you've been classified as a terrorist. And I'm not sure what the definition for a terrorist is. That normally you would have to get a warrant if you wanted to do a search or arrest someone. You'd have to go before an impartial judge who would review that situation and seek probable cause, which would be to establish the reason for law enforcement to want to spy or to surveil that person. But now it's the understanding you don't have to do that. That is integral to the United States Constitution to protect people against unreasonable searches and seizures. That is a key to freedom. We don't have that now. That's a different situation since the 9/11, since the Patriot Act was instituted. That's a tremendous loss that most people don't realize. That's something that reverberates throughout this country and throughout the world. If America at one time was looked at as the beacon of freedom, it's not happening now. It's not happening, as Pamela so eloquently stated, that we're in distress. We're really much in distress when you can lock people up like they do in Guantanamo, not have any trials, not allowed to be having attorneys representing you, when you were subject to military tribunals without the rights you would normally have in a jury trial. It's not more, even worse than draconian. It's almost totalitarian. It's so depressing and so going in the wrong direction that it has to be redirected. It has to be, or else the freedoms that we are so proud to say we had, we don't have. And I would say that most Americans don't know the significance of the Patriot Act. They don't know how it is contradictory to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. And they don't know that, as Pamela said, apparently this is a battlefield, and now the American people are looked at as the enemy. It would look like that's what's happened. And yet these representatives apparently are nothing but representing interests other than the people's interests, and certainly not protecting and defending the Constitution. So the Constitution is a very important document, in the particular the Bill of Rights, which gives us our freedoms, and our freedoms are definitely under attack. It didn't begin necessarily, though, with this 9/11. If you go back to the Oklahoma bombing, etc., that's basically under the Clinton administration. And under the Democrats, they started becoming these more draconian measures. And certainly under the Bush administration, and now including under Obama, they have continued. It's a continual lockdown on freedom. And as long as they can divert people, today is Sunday. In the United States, a good percentage of the population will spend today in front of their television set watching American football. And they will be that will be their outlet for the week. And this will be make their week if their team wins. And yet, while their team is playing, or winning or losing, their country is crying out for help. As I said, this is a distress the situation. And what, in a compliment I meant to Dr. Harrit before, not to give due credit to Stephen Jones and Kevin Ryan, is that we're Americans in the sense it's our country where this terrible incident happened. And what's so inspiring for me is that you're living in Denmark, in Europe, on the other side of the world, and yet you see the importance of the issues that we're facing, and that all people in the world are facing or will face. And what we're happening in the United States now is, unfortunately, this type of loss of freedom is what many people throughout the world have experienced before or experience presently. It's just something that Americans aren't used to it, and yet probably many areas of the world have had it, and maybe for centuries they've lived under this as some kind of draconian measures or some totalitarian measures. To reverse it is the most important thing. As we mentioned before, everything is in the balance now. I think Buckminster Fuller, the great futurist and scientist, and perhaps genius, I guess he was a genius, he basically said one time, I think, if we took and organized everything properly, we could all live not like millionaires, but like billionaires. In other words, if you organize things with the right values, you can have an incredible society, something probably akin to like having heaven on earth. And yet, the corollary or the reverse would be if you don't. And now what we're seeing is possibly down the road. If we don't, you could also have a hell on earth. You could have a prison on earth, and that's what we don't want. And now we've tasted, when you look at historically democracy, where it's flowered and how long it's flowered, there's nothing to guarantee that it will be sustained. As Thomas Jefferson said, in order to have a democracy, you need vigilance and education. So what I've seen in the United States, the people are totally uneducated. The worst way to get educated is to go and listen to the news on television, because you will be totally miseducated. And there's so much deception and diversion away from looking at facts, as I said, through the television, that you can't be vigilant. So if you're not vigilant and you're not educated, you set yourself up to be a slave or a pauper or even something worse, a prisoner. So it's very important, again, to reinstill those incredible values that one time people had, where they were vigilant. They questioned the government. That's why you have the Second Amendment in the United States. It was because the government was looked at as a tyranny. When they set up the Constitution, there was a tyrant, there was a king, there was a despot. And government has a tendency to revert to that if it's not truly elected and representing the people. The question is, through all these special interests and lobbyists, the United States Congress seems to be the biggest poorhouse, and I don't like to say that, maybe in the world, where you can buy what you want. And it seems that must have been what happened, because I don't think 90% of the people or more would agree with what's going on, yet it's going on. And so the question is, and you scratch your head, how the heck is it going on when no one in their right mind would agree for these trends? So they have to be reversed, and education is so essential. And these programs just to allow us to vocalize ourselves and hopefully to be able to do it more and more and get the word out through the various means that architects and engineers are doing and other groups are doing to raise the standard, to raise the level of consciousness of people. So I guess I don't know if I answered your question, but I got a lot off my chest. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, and yes, it has to be reversed. You mentioned that you're amazed that people on the other side of the world stand up to 9/11 and try to tell the truth. And Niels, maybe you can you maybe tell the Americans what did 9/11 do to? Why are we standing up? What did it do to the Danish people?
Yeah, right. First, it's very difficult to come in after both Pamela and you, David, because you're really cleaning the table off. I mean, you're saying all the essentials, and it's moving, addressing two different aspects eventually. But I agree full-heartedly. As to this 9/11 was a global event, obviously, for many reasons, and my involvement, and I think everybody's involvement here, is just the sense of justice. I mean, we are opposed to crime, okay. We want freedom, and we want criminals to be charged and eventually evicted, or what you call it. I'm missing an English word here. But regarding the present state of affairs in Europe, maybe addressing another thing, because yes, we are feeling the consequences of 9/11. And now we have to talk about economy, because you know that the dollar is actually, United States went bankrupt in 2008, but due to the banking system, the Federal Reserve has been able to keep the collapse, postponing the collapse, let's put it this way. And one way of doing it actually is trashing the euro. Goldman Sachs now is sitting on the European banking system. They have their own man as director of the European Central Bank. They have Goldman Sachs man as prime minister in Italy. The previous prime minister in Greece was a Goldman Sachs man. And also what happened recently, 2 weeks ago, actually, that what they call the governor of Bank of England has just been appointed. He is also a former Goldman Sachs employee and a Canadian. So that is so, and the overall picture, as I see it here, is that the banksters, as they are called, have been successful actually in preventing the euro from being a global reserve currency. If that had happened, you know, the dollar would be collapsing, and that is the key actually to their power. And so what will happen with the next couple of months or half a year is very, very insecure. We cannot guess what will happen, but it's going to be serious stuff. The key is, as I totally agree, information. And they could not pull this one off without complete control of the mainstream media, and also complete control of academia. I noticed that Pamela was talking about when she was addressing the students and eventually the teachers, and up to a certain point they were very receptive, but then they kind of drifted off. This is a reflection of the control of academia, which has been going on for a longer time in the United States than in Europe. You cannot find an American university which is not dependent on federal funding. And the same trend we have seen in Europe over the last 10, 11 years. My own university University of Copenhagen, goes back to 1488. I think it is the next oldest university in Europe, because the University of Bologna is older, but the University of Copenhagen is very old. And since 1488, we have been self-ruling, meaning that our leadership has been elected among the employers and eventually also the students. But in 2003, they changed all that. So now it is a complete top-down organization where the dean and the president and the vice president are appointed by a board, which is appointed by the government. So this was ended, how many? More than 500 years history of independence, which was taken down. And they're changing the funding system as well. So all my younger colleagues now, they're writing applications for their own salary, etc., etc. Academia has been gagged. And so how do we break the information barrier? I think that the journalist is my experience, and as I told you previously, this is what I'm spending most of my time actually addressing the young journalists and the freelance journalists, those outside the mainstream media, because they're still receptive. And whenever we get a slot in the mainstream media, it's always a mistake. It's a younger journalist who makes a faux pas, as the French say, a false step, and meaning they're making a mistake, so they're being stopped. But there is this, we are operating within that two-dimensional surface of decency, because they present to be decent. And that is the same two-dimensional level of decency you are operating in, David, as a lawyer, as an attorney. And so if I could follow your testimony up with the question, that would be, where are your fellow attorneys, lawyers, and is there an organization in parallel? So, there's the Lawyers for 9/11 Truth. I don't know actually how they're doing, but somehow they all know what you just said. The question is if they have a heart and a conscience which can be addressed. Are you there, David?
The last year we had the 10th anniversary to commemorate the 9/11. I at that time attempted to organize New Jersey, and in New Jersey there's 21 counties, or these are government areas, districts. So it's broken down into 21 areas, and each area has a prosecutor, and each county. And of those 21 counties in New Jersey, 17 had victims. 17 had victims. The highest was in Bergen County, which is at 123 people killed, and the least was down in Atlantic County, which is down south, at one person. And on behalf of the architects and engineers, I sent them, all the prosecutors, copies of the Blueprint for Truth and a letter we took a long time to compose, and other information, and also gave them a list of the people that were killed in their area, broken down by the names, the towns they lived in, their ages, and where they worked that day. And basically was hoping to get some kind of response from them. And didn't really get a response from them. And when I work in the criminal court, I work with prosecutors all the time, so I hand-delivered 30 to 40 DVDs to others to get the reaction. And hardly got any kind of reaction, just a little. But I think it's time to follow it up. I gave it to a lot of other lay attorneys in the area, and most of them, I think they're scared to deal with it. I really do. But I think that time now is to push it. You would hate to say that time is ready now, 11 years later. I would have hoped 10 years later it was ready. I would have hoped that it would have been ready immediately, but it's not. It's because the trauma is so great. And maybe because this state, and I can only speak for New Jersey, is right in the shadows of where everything happened. Maybe the trauma is greater. I'm always remarked. I think it's remarkable in the way that a lot of the activity is out west, 3,000 miles away in California, or in out in the western states, whereas right here in New Jersey there seems to be hardly any activity. So I think that it still has to be organized. It just hasn't been, and it takes a concentrated effort to do that, and it's something that I myself am considering attempting to do, but that's why it hasn't been. The other day I had a friend of mine, because I had a background as in law enforcement and police officer for many years, and I had come into my office, my law office, and a police officer that I used to work with, and he is retired, and he is a Blue Angel, which means there's in the United States there's a motorcycle group called Blue Angels that are police officers. They're good guys on motorcycles. And he was mostly a Bush Republican, and we talked about 9/11, although he was up on different theories, and he didn't necessarily want to agree with me. I said, listen, here's the experts speak out. You have it. Here it's yours. Take it home. Watch it. Let me know what you think. Well, he got back in touch with me within a few days, and he said, Dave, you changed me. You switched me. I watched it. I changed. So here's a guy that was sporting the sort of the Bush administration. All he had to do was see that video. He's a smart guy. He's a police officer of life. He's one of the best police officers actually I work with as far as instincts. And he grabbed right onto it and called and got in touch with me and said, you got me. I've changed. I believe what the DVD is saying. So again, what I learned back in when I was a student during the Vietnam era, and I was very much opposed to what happened in Vietnam, and what I learned was that the students were the ones that eventually took the message back to the parents or back to the community. So, I think the architects and engineers are on the right path, and Pamela was talking about that too as far as colleges. Colleges are so important because these kids, in a sense, they're in a, I don't say they're naive, they're innocent, but yet they're not encumbered with the responsibilities of an adult, of a job, of a family, of paying a mortgage on a house and things of that nature. They do certainly have concerns of finding a job and things, but they're more open and more receptive. I don't think that's been done yet with the concerted effort organized that should be to wake the campuses up. I think the campuses, once they get this message, they can run with it. Right now it's a few people doing a lot of work. Then it could be a lot of people doing a lot of work, and it'll be a lot easier for everyone else. So I think you have to think of it in a sense of, at least for me, it's still the beginning. It's still, even though it's 11 years later, it's still the beginning to crack it open. But once it's cracked open, it'll move so quickly. It'll move real quick. But it's still we're in the process of prying open.
David, let me interrupt on that because I believe that we're joined by Richard Gage, who's very deeply involved in the college outreach. And are you with us, Richard?
Hi, Pam. Hi, David. Hi, Niels. How you doing?
Hi. Hello, Richard.
Hello, Richard. This is Niels Copenhagen here.
Hello. Great discussion we're having here. I'm just really enjoying the depth of the discussion.
Yeah. Maybe we can get Richard maybe a little higher. No.
Yes, it is a great conversation, and thank you for joining us, Richard. I will do this brief. I will shortly say something in Danish about this, what we're doing here, and then I will come back to Richard. Fordi jeg håber, du har lyttet med ude i stuen. Det her, det er information, som du ikke får nogen andre steder. Ikke på Danmarks Radio, ikke på TV2, men du hører det på Radio Frihed. Og jeg er ked af, at det selvfølgelig bliver nødt til at blive hørt på engelsk, men det her, det er det, som rører sig blandt de bevidste amerikanere. Og vi har bevidste amerikanere igennem på telefoner. Jeg vil ikke tale mere. Jeg vil bare håbe, at du lytter med de sidste 20 minutter, hvor vi har stifteren af Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, Richard Gage, igennem. Sorry, Richard. Please tell us about what you are doing in all of this. I know that you have done a promo tour for this amazing movie, Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out. How did it go? Can you tell us about it?
How did that go in particular?
I know that you
did a tour where you tried to present your new movie, Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out, to people around USA. How did these presentations go for you?
Gotcha. Yes, we had a 32-city tour here in the U.S. where we premiered this movie, and I apologize, I don't know how much you were able to tell your audience about it, but this movie contains interviews from 43 of the 1,750 architects and engineers now signed on to the petition calling for a new investigation of the destruction of the towers. And among these individuals are high-rise architects, structural engineers, metallurgists, physicists, chemists, forensic engineers, fire protection engineers, and controlled demolition experts. And they lay out the evidence very clearly for the explosive demolition of all three World Trade Center high-rises on 9/11. And this is very disturbing evidence. And as Dave highlighted, most everybody who sees this is quite captivated and easily concludes the same, that these towers suffered not destruction by airplane impact and jet fuel and office fires, but by some greater heinous crime that is almost unimaginable by most people. And so I'm happy to highlight the evidence in World Trade Center 7 and the Twin Towers that has moved so many people after seeing this movie. The movie has been played now on the PBS TV system in the United States in Colorado, and as a result, it's been shared across the PBS.org system, the website, and it became the most watched video above and beyond Frontline and Masterpiece Theater, McNeil Lehrer News Hour. So we're, of course, absolutely delighted that it's getting into mainstream America, because that is where this story has to break, because people will not believe what they don't see on TV. And unfortunately, they will believe what they do see on TV, which is why we have the great public myth that we're all battling here. Americans have an incredible ability to be spoon-fed and believe what they see. So we have now 4 other PBS TV stations in the country that have committed to showing the movie. So actually there's a great deal of progress there, as well as during our 32-city tour of the movie. As well, we have also begun to break into the college market in attending 3 major conferences across the country where campus activities directors from colleges go in numbers exceeding about 100 per conference, and they listen to a 10-minute showcase that we gave along with other entertainers and speakers that they were there to hire. So we did make some great contacts, and we're following up. We hope to be hired by colleges to speak at their campuses. People were quite moved as they heard this showcase. So let me know if you want me to drone on here, and I'll give you a quick highlight of the evidence. But first, I want to turn the mic back to our host.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe we should not talk so much about the evidence now that we have you, because we've spoken about it in the last interview, and we only have 15 minutes left. I would much rather like to hear from you again, Richard, that you go to these presentations. Niels do it also. He had been in Moscow and he has been in London, and you were at the Malaysia hearings, where can you just take us briefly? How did that go?
Indeed, the former Prime Minister of Malaysia of 21 years assembled a group of probably 9 or 10 panelists all together from around the world in an international hearing on 9/11. This was one of the classiest events I've ever been to in my life. They have committed funds from the Pradana Global Peace Foundation to really get to the bottom of what happened on 9/11. This is a pre-hearing in an international crimes tribunal, which the Pradana Global Peace Foundation has put together as a part of their efforts to criminalize war. because they now realize that 9/11 was a criminal act, of course a treasonous act, designed to spawn two wars, in Iraq and Afghanistan, through deceptive measures. So we were delighted to spend 40 minutes highlighting all of the evidence that is captured in 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out, our DVD, which, by the way, can be seen at our website, which is AE911truth.org. That stands for Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. AE911truth.org. It was extraordinary. Also present was former Congressman Cynthia McKinney, Juliette Chiesa, the filmmaker of Zero and former European Parliament member, and James Corbett of the Corbett Report, and Graham McQueen, who's a well-known researcher in the 9/11 Truth Movement. An extraordinary day of hearings.
Kuzadowski.
And they can be seen, by the way, at CorbettReport.com.
Yes,
and also if you go to YouTube, you can search the hearings, the Indonesian hearings, and then you might find it. Just briefly, also just before the show, Niels, you told me about that you were in London and you had an experience where you almost felt like you were crowd surfing. Can you try to explain in a few minutes to our listeners what was it you experienced in London?
No, it's not really an experience, but actually this was a kind of annual conference on state crimes against democracy, or is it called Accountable Democracy now, or something. The London branch of the 9/11 Truth Movement, which is spearheaded by Ian Henschel, who has written also a best-selling book on the English market called New Evidence on 9/11. But this is actually an event which comes back about once a year, and we've been invited a couple of times this time. What I was referring to and what Josef is referring to is my closing remark actually on my presentation. Because many people in the movement right now, what is happening now? Where are we now? What is the state of affairs in the 9/11 Truth Movement? David has pointed out is in New Jersey, he feels like this is the beginning, and Pamela and Rena has been making an account of their bicycle ride across the United States. Here in Copenhagen, we have our local action group, and we are doing what we can. All of this, I think, is basically reflecting the same thing, just in different geographical and cultural settings. Everybody is pushing the buttons within their own reach. And I think that is beautiful. I get a lump in my throat each time I talk about it. Everybody is acting out of where they are, the point in time and space where life has put them, and where they have been found by 9/11. Now, what's happening right now? I've said this earlier in the program, but I would like to say it again. We are, for different reasons, economy being the strongest, most important reason, we are on the verge of social changes of a magnitude and a consequence which is unprecedented in human civilization, in my opinion. The situation in Europe is different from that in the United States, basically because you have so many firearms in the United States and we don't have them in Europe. But in both places, there'll be social changes coming of a magnitude which could be compared with a tsunami, and which will actually, what I imagine, hope, and expect, will also contribute to the awareness and the ability to receive and understand the seriousness and the whole situation, which has been outlined so brilliantly by all four of you here in the program up until now. So this change will be what our job is, because we have the key, actually, what I think is this shift of paradigm, which is a necessity for this not ending in the state we have not said the word yet. But David was very close, so let me say it. We are talking about fascism. We're talking about avoiding, preventing fascism. We're shining as much light on it before it happens. That is the only way to prevent it. That is to pull it out in the open, shine light on it before it happens. And 9/11 is key. Architects and engineers is the most efficient organization to holding up the banner of truth. But so if I may go back to the start here, my presentation in London, I ended by showing a giant wave, a tsunami. And I was the luck to find a picture where a surfer was standing on top of a gigantic wave. And this is my vision of the time to come, where the 9/11 truthmen should have the courage, the responsibility to surf the wave, to hold up the banner of truth. And that will be the key. 9/11 is key, and Building 7 is key to 9/11. Thank you.
Yeah, and Pamela said it herself. Go read Naomi Wolf's End of America. It's 10 Steps to Fascism, and I used them myself to become a teacher in my bachelor assignment. We are walking towards fascism. We have our neighbor country is Germany, and I can just say that a famous critical thinker called Max Horkheimer, who after the Second World War started the Frankfurt School, he said, if the intellectuals and the workers could have worked together, we could have stopped Nazism. And I feel that it's exactly what we are trying to do now. Now we are trying to merge the intellectuals and the workers so we can stand together against fascism. We only have 4 minutes left to go, and I would like to use these 3 of these minutes to say goodbye to our guests, Pamela, Senzee-Rena, Patty, David Meiswinkle, and Richard Gage. Pamela or Rena, maybe. Rena, thank you very much for being in our show.
Final word. Can you
give us a final word, Rena?
Maybe we lost her.
Okay, then maybe
David, can you give us a final word from the United States?
Yes, thank you very much for having the show. I do agree with the description of the tsunami or the tidal wave. I've often thought that myself, that which what we're building up to, this incredible energy that can be take us into the future for good or the reverse. And I do believe you're totally accurate when you depict the possibilities, the option, if it's not reversed, of fascism, which is really the destruction of the human race or the spirit of man. So in that light, I embrace you and everyone on the show, and let's move forward and bring in the light, continue to bring in the light. And I'm excited about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And Richard, do you have any last remarks, just 30 seconds or so?
Yes, if there's anybody who's new to this information, who is wondering what to do, it is extremely important that all of us across the world take action, as did Pam and Rena in their 3,000-mile trek across our country to wake up middle America. Everybody can send the AE911truth.org link, for instance, to architects, engineers, media representatives, elected representatives, and to everybody else that they know. This is one thing that everybody can do from your computer. Email this link and other information that's been discussed on this on this radio program.
And Richard,
I need to stop you because I only have 1 minute left, and I would like to thank you. Please stay on the phone, everybody, because I just have to use this last minute to finish off in Danish. Tak fordi I har været med her på showet. Som I kan høre, har vi haft meget, meget travlt. Jeg håber, I har fanget nogle af de ting,